Welcome to the discussion on nutritional needs during pregnancy. We know that without a doubt, a nutritious, well-balanced eating plan can be one of the greatest gifts that a mother gives to a developing baby. Pregnancy nutrition is essential to a healthy baby, and ideally adopting a healthy eating plan before pregnancy is best. What we do know when comparing the energy and protein needs of the pregnant and non-pregnant woman, that energy needs change for the pregnant woman throughout the 3 trimesters. And although pregnant women are eating for 2, they do not need to eat twice as much as they normally do. We know that during the first trimester, energy needs are not really increased above levels for non-pregnant women, and that during the second and third trimesters, an additional 350 to 450 calories a day retrospectively is recommended. As far as macronutrient needs, when we talk about those, so remember our macronutrients are protein, carbs, and fat, and we're going to include fiber in here as well because this is very important during this time. Protein needs are increased during pregnancy because protein's needed for the synthesis of new blood cells, formation of the placenta, enlargement of the uterus and breasts, and growth of the baby. We know that an additional 25 grams of protein above the RDA for non-pregnant women, or 1.1 grams per kilogram a day, is recommended for the second and third trimesters of pregnancy. As far as carbohydrates go, to ensure sufficient glucose to fuel the fetal and maternal brains during pregnancy, the RDA for carbohydrates is increased by 45 grams. So we know that the RDA for a non-pregnant woman is 130 grams, so this moves it to 175 grams. And if this carbohydrate comes from whole grains, fresh fruits and vegetables, it will also provide the additional extra 3 grams a day fiber recommended during pregnancy. We know that it's not necessary to increase the total fat intake percentages during pregnancy, but additional amounts of the essential fatty acids, linoleic and alpha-linoleic acid, are recommended because they're incorporated into the placenta and fetal tissues, and long-chain polyunsaturated fatty acids, DHA and ARA, are important because they not only support maternal health, but they're essential for development of the eyes and the nervous system in the fetus. And despite increases in the recommended intakes of protein, carbohydrate, and specific fatty acids during pregnancy, the distribution of calories from carbohydrate, protein, and fat should be about the same as that recommended for the general population. So here's this graph that illustrates the difference between the recommended daily intake of energy, protein, and carbohydrate, fiber, essential fatty acids, and water for a 25-year-old non-pregnant woman and a 25-year-old pregnant woman during the 3rd trimester. So we can see energy requirements are a little bit more, and that can be increased with a snack of a sandwich, an apple, and a glass of milk, and that's enough to easily add the extra calories needed by a woman in her 3rd trimester. As far as protein, here we know that it's the extra 25 grams a day, and that can be done just by 1 chicken breast that provides about 25 grams of protein recommended during pregnancy. Extra fiber, we see 2 slices of whole grain bread or a whole apple with the skin provides the additional fiber recommendation. And then as far as the fatty acids, the vegetables, oils, and nuts are good sources of these essential fatty acids. Fish is a good source of the long-chain omega-3 fatty acid, EPA and DHA. And we know that only about a cup of additional extra water is needed during the day. So you can really compare the non-pregnant to the pregnant woman energy needs here. As far as fluid and electrolyte needs, during pregnancy, a woman will accumulate anywhere from an additional 6 to 9 liters of water, and some of this water is intracellular, resulting from the growth of tissues, but most is due to increases in the volume of blood and the fluid between the cells. We know that the need for water increases from 2.7 liters a day in non-pregnant women to 3 liters a day during pregnancy. And despite the changes in the amount and distribution of water during pregnancy, there's no evidence that requires for potassium, sodium, and chloride are different for pregnant women than for non-pregnant women. And here is a graph that's doing the same comparison. It compares the recommended micronutrients for 25-year-old non-pregnant and a 25-year-old pregnant woman during the third trimester of pregnancy. And we can see the need for B vitamins increases as energy needs increase. The need for folate, vitamin B12, iron, and zinc increase to support the formation of new maternal and fetal cells, especially in that first trimester and even pre-pregnancy. We know the requirements for zinc and vitamin B6 rise to meet the needs for increased protein synthesis. Calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, vitamin D, and vitamin C are needed to provide for the growth and development of bone and connective tissue in the fetus, and as well as changes in the pregnant woman's body. Vitamin A is needed for cell differentiation and development, and low intake can cause low birth weight and premature birth, but too much, remember the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, K, A, DEC, too much can be a negative effect and increase the risk of heart disease, heart defects, cleft palate, and other developmental defects. We do know that iodine and selenium are needed for the synthesis of thyroid hormones, and iodine deficiency, we talked about that in the minerals chapter, can cause deficiencies and developmental disorders. So what are the vitamin and mineral needs? So many vitamins and minerals, as we saw, are needed for the growth of new tissues in both mother and child, and many of those nutrients and the increased need is easily met with the extra food the mother consumes. But for others, increased need is met by their because their absorption is increased during pregnancy. So for a few like calcium, vitamin D, folate, B12, iron, and zinc, there is a risk that the woman will not consume adequate amounts without supplementation. So very often the need for the prenatal multivitamin. We know specifically calcium and vitamin D during gestation, that the fetus accumulates about 30 grams of calcium mostly during the third trimester when the bones are growing rapidly and the teeth are forming. However, the RDA is not increased during pregnancy because our body automatically increases the amount of calcium absorbed. So the RDA for calcium can be met by consuming 3 to 4 servings of dairy products daily. Women who are lactose intolerant can meet their calcium needs with yogurt, cheese, reduced lactose or lactate milk, calcium-rich vegetables, calcium-fortified foods and beverages, and calcium supplements. Many pregnant women fail to consume adequate amounts of calcium, and low calcium intakes increase the risk that the mother may develop preeclampsia. So adequate vitamin D is essential to ensure efficient absorption of calcium, and the RDA for vitamin D during pregnancy is 600 international units, the same as it is for non-pregnant women, and this is based on the assumption of minimal sun exposure. Folate, we know the RDA for all women capable of becoming pregnant is 600 micrograms of dietary folate a day. Very, very important, as we saw in the previous chapters, for the synthesis of DNA and cell division, specifically neural tube formation during that 21 to 28 days after conception, and prevention of megaloblastic large cell anemia in the mother, premature birth, and low birth weight. We get folate from supplements, fortified products, dark leafy greens, beans, and orange juice. So very, very important during this time as well. And it even is important after the neural tube closes, we can see here. So essential. Fortification in neural tube defects. We know that during the fortification process, it has helped reduce some of the neural tube defects in this population. Consumers reading the ingredients list on, for example, this box of pasta can see that's made from a coarse flour called semolina with added niacin, thiamine, riboflavin, iron, and folic acid. And in the late 1990s, the US and Canada began requiring the addition of folic acid to pasta and other enriched grain products in order to increase intake in women of childbearing age, with the goal of reducing the incidence of neural tube defects. These enriched grains were chosen for fortification because they're commonly consumed in regular amounts by this target population, and because high folic acid intake can mask the symptoms of vitamin B12 deficiency. The amount added to the enriched grain products was kept low enough to avoid this problem in any segment of the population, but high enough to reduce the risk of neural tube defects. And we know that you, as a nutrition scientist, now can see that this was a public health measure that has succeeded, and since the initiation of folic acid fortification, the incidence of neural tube defects has been reduced by almost 50% in the United States and Canada. B12, the RDA is 2.6 a day, and for regeneration, its goal is for regeneration of active forms of folate and prevention of megaloblastic anemia. We get this from animal products, fortified foods, and supplements. Pregnant women who consume vegan diets must include B12 supplements or foods and beverages fortified with B12 to meet their needs, as well as those of the fetus. Iron and zinc. Iron is essential for hemoglobin, blood, and prevention of iron deficiency anemia. We get that from red meat, leafy greens, fortified foods. Zinc for functions of DNA and RNA synthesis of proteins. It prevents fetal malformations, premature birth, and low birth weight. Women often get that as well from red meat, so usually supplemented, and vegetarians. There's actually a daily food plan for moms, and the daily food plan for moms is on the Choose My Plate website, and this one's for a 26-year-old woman who's 5'4" tall, and recommendation 30 to 60 minutes of exercise a day. And the energy needs are not increased during the first trimester, so the recommended amounts from each group for the first trimester are the same as for non-pregnant women. Prenatal supplements, the energy and nutrient needs needed for pregnancy can be met by following this, but even when a healthy diet is consumed, it's difficult to meet all of the vitamin and mineral needs for pregnancy. Therefore, reason for prenatal supplements, and they're generally prescribed for pregnant women, and these supplements are included in the additional folic acid and iron we discussed, and they must be taken along with and not in place of a carefully planned diet.